Hello and welcome to All Stats Out We, a podcast in which Leeds fans cast their combined eye over goings on at Elland Road, giving scrutiny to the underlying statistics and tactical footings at work at Leeds United. I'm Martin Riley and I'm joined today by Will Clay. Will, how are you doing, mate? It's been a while since you've been on a pod.
It has. There's been sort of ongoing technical difficulties, but hey, I'm here for now, and it's good to be back and useful to talk about of the sort of Premier League teams. One that I know a little bit more about because most of my friends are Forest fans, so here to run agendas against them tonight.
You've got to run genders where you can, and that's great. So okay, I think you're based in Nottingham, aren't you?
Yeah, I live close enough that you can hear them score, or more to the point, you can hear them concede for the most part this season if you listen, if I'm sat outside.
Indeed. And we'll get into some of the details about Forest soon. But first, have you had your tea yet?
I have.
What
I had roast pork and roast potato, sort of like a full roast dinner, but on a Wednesday evening, which is a little bit unusual. But we had some pork that sort of needed using, so
cool.
I was pretty grateful to have that. What about yourself?
I, for one, we got fish and chips for tea because we didn't have time to cook. So I had fish, chips and mushy peas, so that filled a hole. But that is enough of the tea time talk. We're here to talk about those tricky trees, also known as Nottingham Forest. We did try very hard to find a guest. We reached out to two different guests. However, neither of them had time to come on. Both the initial guy who our friend John McKenzie put me in touch with wasn't available. So they recommended someone else, and they also weren't available. So we have been trying our best, but we're on a bit of a streak now where we haven't got guests. So we'll do our best to get one for the next one after the international break. But first of all, quick overview of Forest. So for those who have been living under a rock recently, last season they qualified for European football thanks to Nuno Espirito Santo. However, things weren't all that rosy under the surface, and thanks to the strain in relationship between the pretty mad owner, Evangelos Marinakis, and Nuno, I think there was some sort of divide between the fact that Nuno didn't like, I think it's a sporting director, I forget his name.
Yeah, Edu.
And
is
that's it,
the guy that's caused all the problems.
Yeah, exactly. And because of that, they sacked Nuno, and he was replaced by Ange Postecoglou, which it was not a great choice, and I think the whole footballing world knew that was not a great choice. To go from Nuno ball to Ange ball is kind of like the two polar opposites when it comes to football. So it went as equally as bad for him as it did for him at Spurs, and he was also sacked, and now they have Sean Dyche to try to solidify them and keep them up. So would you be able to run us through how they've been doing under Dyche? Only a few games that he's had now, but how have they been doing?
Yeah, so first game, Porto at home in the Europa League. They won 2-0, and a lot of the narrative after the game was like, right, Dyche is brilliant. He's had an instant impact, which they won. But they won 2-0 with 2 penalties, and they had 1 shot on target besides that. So they won, they didn't concede, which is an improvement on Postecoglou, but I don't think the kind of, see, told you so, he's the best manager ever, he's had an instant impact. I don't think that's fair, personally. Second game,
understandable,
away to Bournemouth. They lost 2-0 and were completely rubbish. Conceded a goal direct from a corner, which ironically shouldn't have been a corner, so that's quite funny. But also, the keeper simply should have caught the ball, in my opinion, rather than letting it through his hands. And then most recently, they drew at home to Manchester United. And I think they kind of deserve to feel aggrieved because the first goal they conceded was from a corner, which again, the ball didn't even go out this time, and the referee gave a corner. And Casemiro scored a header at the back post. And then in the second goal, it was sort of cleared from a corner. And I don't know if you've seen it, Diallo just wrapped his foot round a volley from the edge of the box, and it was sort of unsavable. So you win some, you lose some. And equally, they also should have had a penalty, arguably, whilst 2-1 up. So the game sort of got away from them, and then maybe didn't get what they think they should have deserved. But that's kind of it for Dyche so far. 3 games, 1 of each result.
That sounds about right. And obviously still very early days on the Dyche. Before them, obviously they've done quite badly this season, and that is why they've had such a merry-go-round in managers. But we won't go into too much of the form before Dyche. I don't think it's too relevant, really. So, but now to get into the recent activity they've had, which was very busy over the summer. They spent a lot of money and also brought in a fair amount of money as well. They brought in 120 million roughly and spent roughly 200 million. I won't go through all of the incomings because there's too many of them, or all the outgoings, but the headline signings were, and there's quite a few of these for headline signings, Omari Hutchinson from Ipswich for 40 million, Dan Ndoye from Bologna for 40 mil, Dylan Bakwa from Strasbourg for 35 million, Anwar Kalimwedo from Stade Rennais, 30 million, James McAtee from Man City for 25 million. So that is a lot of attacking reinforcements. And in terms of outgoings, the biggest ones there was Anthony Elanga to Newcastle for 60 million and Danilo to Botafogo for 20 million. So they've had quite the turnaround, quite a lot of well-known names, especially in the Tactico communities. Bakwa and Kalimwedo and Ndoye, they're all very well loved, and so is Hutchinson, to be fair. So yeah, they've had a very attractive window, but I do know there's not a lot of defensive acquisitions there. Maybe some of the lower end ones that they made signings in were defenders, but there's a lot more in attack than defence. So that's quite interesting, and maybe it does play out in the stats. We'll see that a bit later. But do you want to take through how it is Forest are looking to set up in possession under Dyche? Is it what we have come to expect from Sean Dyche?
Yeah, there isn't a million things to say in terms of, I was saying just before the recording that this isn't a leopard that's changed its spots. It's sort of, he's not been there long, and I think the fact that they're playing sort of 2 games a week gives him even less training time. But I watched the full game against Man United and then extended highlights of other games, and it's pretty basic, like 4-2-3-1. Typically, Anderson is the midfielder that receives the ball off the centre-backs, and Yates, for the most part, against Man United, because Douglas Luiz went off injured really early, so Yates was mostly playing, kind of just got out of the way and pushed almost into like a 4-1-4-1 in possession. He just, was like, Anderson, you can be the guy. I'll just get out of the way, which I think might just be a stylistic thing because Yates isn't very good on the ball. Whereas if Sangare was playing, he is a bit better at that side of the game. So that would remain to be seen. But kind of, 4-2-3-1, 4-1-4-1. A lot of crosses into the box, a lot of getting bodies into the box. One of the goals they scored against Man United was the right back scoring from sort of a deflected cross and then the headed rebound. It was the right back that put it in the net. So, pretty standard Dyche iterations, I'd say.
That sounds about right. I did actually ask for a bit of a rundown from one of the guests who I tried to get on, and he said that it maybe isn't Dyche as normal, but he was referring to the Porto game,
right?
That they had more possession than what they've come to expect. That most people would come to expect from a Dyche side. So
they had 51%. I don't know if that's an insane amount, but it's not like dominating, right?
No, it's not dominating, but it's also not quite what we'd expect from Dyche. But like you've already said, he hasn't had much time to train them to get them into what he wants. And I'd probably expect after the international break, they'll probably morph into their true form under Dyche. But we shall see what the weekend holds for us. See if they've been able to do anything different on the training ground. And how about out of possession? Is that, again, aggressive, mid to low block sort of a thing that we know from Dyche?
Yeah, it's all the standard. I looked at the thing that I always associate with Dyche teams, which actually has similarities with Arsenal or Man City, is tactical fouling. I think his teams are always so like, right, we might be out of position, just kick them, just pull them, doesn't really matter what.
Yep.
And against just in terms of more vintage Dyche, maybe against Man United, they only had 41% possession, which is maybe more what you'd expect. And alongside that, they had 17 fouls committed, which is, I looked, and across the last 5 games, Leeds are averaging 7. So to be, and we're not a team that dominates the ball either. So to be sort of double what we had is, I think, kind of shows the approach, but works for them. And I also think maybe that's just because they aren't particularly well drilled at the moment, because there was a lot of times, not that Man United did much with it, but they were pretty open in transition. I felt the spacing between the defence and midfield a lot of the time was just, Man United a few times sort of played ball out to the wing back or the outside centre back, who just like turned it round a corner to Fernandes, who was like in on the defence.
Yeah.
Because they could just bypass the midfield with one pass, which maybe that's why there were so many fouls. I wouldn't expect Dyche teams traditionally long term to be that easy to play through. So that was a bit surprising. But with the lack of training time and the fact they're playing away in Europe tomorrow, maybe we can hope that they are still a little bit ragged rather than the sort of nightmare to play against that we've seen at other times.
That would make sense. You would expect, though, that they will rest a lot of their players for the European game, because the focus has to be on the league for them.
Yeah, and they're only playing Sturm, who, sorry to any Sturm fans listening, I'm not sure there'll be any, but just in case I'm covering myself, I would say we're probably better at football than them. So I think the rotations will come tomorrow rather than against us.
Yep, 100%. That's what I would expect too. I know this is still early days and it's be difficult to say, but do you think that Dyche is likely to do anything different to normal against us?
I wouldn't have thought so. It's kind of physical boys at the back. Let your attacking talent do something, which longer term I'm interested to see. That his whole thing has been that if he had better players than he had at Burnley, he'd play nicer football.
Yeah, I remember
that. Which, maybe he would. And he was also not great at Everton, but equally their squad, he hadn't died, but like that's kind of it in terms of nice attackers. Whereas with this squad, as you kind of listed at the start, they had a pretty functional attack at the bare minimum last season, and they've added like all the shiny toys this year. So I'm not expecting Sunday to be free-flowing total football, but it'll be interesting to see longer term, just if that holds true or not.
Yes, absolutely. And I think if they do sort out the defensive problems they've had with the quality they've got in attack, you'd have to say that it seems quite likely that Dyche would be able to turn them around. Unfortunately for us, of course, and unfortunately for you with all your Forest fan mates. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. So who stood out for you as the Forest player most likely to cause problems for Leeds, or who's a key player for Dyche, would you say? Or bit from both, whichever you prefer?
I think there's sort of like the easy answer is, Gibbs White has a moment out of nothing, which he absolutely does, but equally he hasn't actually been very good this season. Which, without speculating too much, like given the transfer discussions in the summer that he was going to leave, then like seemingly forced to sign a new contract. With that, the video of him looking I don't know, he kind of looked like he'd been held hostage whilst he was saying he was glad to be at the club. I don't know how much that might have had to say. And Doy, as you mentioned, is someone that is very well liked amongst many, many football people. I think brings a goal threat from the wing that maybe is scary, and like he's quite big as well. So I could imagine him, if they're looking for these crosses, maybe like to the back post and he crashes it, might be a worry. I don't know, because Chris Wood, I think, will still be injured, so you can't do the whole narrative of him because he hasn't played for a while, unless I might be completely wrong. I don't think there's like a superstar threat. It's more the general level of quality they have is so far above what we do, which overall worries me.
No, 100%. They've got a lot of threatening attackers in the squad who maybe have been a bit off their best, but all it takes is for them to turn it around and switch it on, and they can cause a lot of problems definitely for a squad of our capability at the present. So I wouldn't say this one will be plain sailing, despite how bad they've been at times this season. But I've been looking over the lineup since Dyche came in. It looks like it's been very steady, the exact same ones players each game. So what I've got here is what the lineup is likely to be. Sells in goal, Savona at right back, Milenkovic and Murillo at centre back, Williams at left back. I did have Anderson and Louise in midfield, but you said that Louise might be injured. So it could be Louise or Yates in midfield. Then the three behind the striker should be Ndoye, Gibbs-White in the middle, and Hudson-Odoi on the left, and Igor Jesus up front with Chris Wood not being available. So would you think that would be likely what it'll look like?
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Because against Man United in the sort of 11th minute, Louise went down holding his hamstring and then had quite a few minutes of treatment and then came off. So I haven't followed up, and there's no deeper research than seeing that, but I would imagine that probably would rule him out.
You'd expect so, yeah.
So, and then it'll be Anderson plus one of Yates or Sangare, in my view. Or maybe Dominguez, but is that his name, Dominguez? The fella that was linked to us for a bit in the Bielsa years.
Oh, yeah. I know who you mean, but I can't think of his name off the top of my head. While you're speaking, I'll look it up.
So I think it'll be definitely Anderson, assuming nothing goes wrong for them tomorrow night. And then it will be kind of Yates or Sangare, or I'm going to keep pretending his name's Dominguez. I think it might be.
You are correct. It is Nicolas. You were correct. So Nicolas Dominguez.
Yeah, so that's good. Yes. And I think of those, Yates is very much the intangibles, standard setter, physical boy. Sangare divides the Forest fan base a lot, actually. Most of my mates seem to either be, he's really good, you're just an idiot if you can't tell he's good at football. And then the other half is, if you think he's good, you're stupid. He's a really divisive player, and I just find that interesting, because once upon a time, he's another one that was quite highly rated when he was at PSV.
Yeah, he was.
So it's kind of interesting to see that maybe that hasn't quite translated in the way it has, and I don't watch enough of Forest to give a definite opinion. I just know that he's one of these that, there's plenty of Leeds players that still divide opinion, even if they're good. Jaden Bogle last season being one. So
no,
I'm not going to pretend I'm some gospel, but it'll be Anderson plus one of three in my view.
No, that makes sense. And just looking over the squad in general, just looking over the numbers of them, it seems like they've maybe had a bit of a problem in getting XG with no Chris Wood in the side. I can see that he's still got the most XG for them, but he's only played 6 games and he's on 2.7 XG. The closest to him is Gibbs-White, who's played 9 games and has got 1.9. So they definitely struggle when they don't have that target to aim for, to the outlet, much like we do if we were to be without Calvert-Lewin. So we have to hope that he is available, but we at least do have someone similar to Calvert-Lewin in Lucas Mecha, so we'll see how that goes. So I also looked over some data, but the data is very messy for Forest, given they've had 3 managers. So lots of salt to be taken with this data, but I will go through a bit of it. They've got the 8th worst XG in the league, 11.42, and they've scored 7 goals from that, so a little bit of an underperformance there, good 4.5 goals on underperformance. Set piece XG, 3rd worst, 2.18, and they've scored twice from that, which means that only 5 goals have come from open play. So that's not a lot of open play, and I would guess most of that underperformance is coming from open play rather than set pieces, considering there's no underperformance on the set piece XG, and the set piece XG is included in the main XG. So, yeah, it's interesting that most of the underperformance comes from open play. Then in terms of against them, they've got the second worst XG against in the league, 16.18, and 19 goals were scored from that. So again, another underperformance there on a whole. So both ends of the pitch are underperforming, which is a little bit similar to us in a lot of respects, to be honest. And set piece XG, third worst, 5.07 XG against, and 9 goals conceded from that. So at the opposite end of the pitch, it seems like it's the set pieces that are causing them problems, and against Man United, that was a problem for them. I think, did both of the goals they conceded come from set pieces, I believe?
Yeah. One of them was an insane finish, but it was still, they didn't really clear the first phase of the corner in the way that you'd hope.
Exactly, yeah. And then I'm not even going to bother going into the pressing data, because that is absolutely pointless. They've had two very low blocking managers, one very low blocking manager, that whatever Daesh is going to be, and one very high pressing manager in Ange. So I'm not even going to bother going through that data. But now, that's enough for Forest. So we're back to you soon for the second half of the Leeds part of the analysis.
Sorry to interrupt. Just a quick one. If you're enjoying the video, be sure to like and subscribe to help us keep the content coming. And if you want even more, you can support us over on patreon.com/ASAW Patreon. You'll get bonus podcasts, exclusive articles, and access to our Discord community, all while helping us make more of the content you love. Thanks. Now let's get back to it.
Okay, so on to the Leeds part of analysis now. What are we expecting our lineup to look like? Now, we was expecting a couple more changes in the last game, but we forgot to allow for Daniel Farke not liking to change a winning side. So, considering we've lost in the last game, are you expecting any changes in this one, Will?
Well, it's the sort of age-old Farke problem of there's sort of what I would think would happen, and then there's Farke tax involved. Because I'd quite like, assuming they're fit, one of James or Nonto to come back in.
Yep.
And then I'd be pretty tempted by bringing Stack in for Tanaka, personally. To revert kind of more to the we're going to run all over you midfield. Which maybe because we're away from home, there's a higher chance of that happening. With the flawed logic that we kind of think Farke has of like home games do this or in these games do that. It's sort of, I don't know, it's not the most rational decision making, it seems like sometimes. But yeah, Stack in and one of the two options for the right wing instead of Aronson, I think would be nice.
And do you expect those things to happen? Which one do you think is most likely to happen?
I think the midfielder is probably more likely to happen than... It's difficult to say, right, when we haven't had the press conference yet and don't know what stage of fitness. James came on for a little bit in the last game. Nonto didn't even make the bench. So it's, if they're fully fit, I'd like them to start. But I sort of don't necessarily expect them to. And then also, that might not even be a discussion if come playing on Sunday, press conference will be Friday, right? Probably.
I think so, yeah.
There might be, answers that make this obsolete by Friday. But yeah, I think the midfield is more likely to change just because he was running the kind of Ampadu Stack Longstaff until Stack broke his ribs against Spurs. So maybe, I saw an interview with him the other day saying he feels a lot better now. So maybe if that's the case, he'll come back in.
Yeah, I would expect so. I can imagine it would be very difficult for him to play at his best, having, was it a broken rib or was it a bruised rib or something?
He definitely broke his finger. I'm sure the thing I read was he broke his finger against somebody, carried on playing, then broke his ribs, and then he said himself would go into challenges with that in the back of his mind. So you just can't commit to playing. No. I've broke my ribs. It's horrible. It's such a rubbish thing. So to try and play to the elite standard of football whilst having that, I wouldn't wish it on anyone. So the fact that there were sort of comments before his injuries were revealed about, Stack hasn't been good recently, I think that's completely understandable why.
No, 100%. I haven't broken my rib, but I have bruised one before, and just bruising a rib, that it was more than one that was bruised. I sort of I was drunk. I went in. I was giving someone a piggyback and stumbled, fell onto the floor, and the whole weight sort of went onto my ribs, and I bruised like 3 of them. Yeah, and so breathing hurt in the days following that.
Anything hurts, and you can't even fix it. It's just horrible.
No. You just have to rest and relax and not do anything. That's the only thing that can fix it. So, I hope that Stack is fit. I too would like to see him back in the side. No offense against Tanaka. I don't think he's been bad, but I think we just need to up the physicality and, like you say, try to run over them a bit. But I also don't expect Aronson to be taken out of the squad. I think it'll be him again. But he does like James as well, so maybe now James is getting back to fitness, there is a bit more of a chance of that, but I think Gnonto being in would be a definite no for me.
It won't happen, even if I'd like it to.
Exactly. So, which players will cause Forest the most problems, do you think? And is there anyone who may struggle to perform in this one? Any matchups that you don't like the look of?
In terms of maybe areas we can benefit, Savona, the right back, gets quite high and wide for Forest.
Okay.
And coupling up with their not quite having rest defence transition side of it perfected, I'd fancy whether that's Okafor managing to get a centre-back rather than the full-back, whether that's there's a midfielder covering and we can transition and then kind of double up with having Goodmanson and Okafor, or I don't know, maybe just, Savona vacating where he should be, and then us maybe getting in on that would be nice, because like I mentioned earlier about Man United sort of playing it wide and one pass into beyond their midfield. It was typically Luke Shaw that was doing that. They'd go wide to him and then round the corner. That'd be nice. I think in terms of important players for us, it's Calvert-Lewin again, which it will be every game that he's fit for. I think whoever ends up marking Anderson might have to have a big game, because he is kind of the guy that runs their midfield. And as good as he is, I think it's strange. He's got a lot more praise this season than last year, even though I think he hasn't actually improved. He's just played for England now. So a lot more people are like, wow, Anderson's brilliant. Yeah. He is very good, but like he hasn't magically got better. He's just kind of become more visible to the average sort of in people's minds. I don't know. But I do think he's really good.
That makes sense. And I would also look at the left side guards. I think generally it's our most threatening side anyway. If we were going to get anything against Brighton, it was going to come from that left side. And that's it, even when we're not playing that well, that side can still show threat. So I would be looking at that side. And obviously, you will know the issues we had with the Brighton game. I assume that you feel the same way about our issues with the Brighton game.
Yeah, I managed to watch the first half an hour and then was working, but having seen a lot of sensible people who I trust their judgment describe what happened, I could kind of picture it perfectly.
Yes,
which is frustrating that it is sort of as textbook as like, here's what we should have done, here's what we did do, here's what the outcome was. Who could have guessed that? It feels like there was a lot of that going on.
Nope.
And
100%.
Yeah. Like my best mate is a Brighton fan, and he got a season ticket there. So I said to him before, if we stodge it up, like we might be okay. If we try and play out from the back, you're going to kill us. And then he just texts me at half an hour like, yeah, you lot are stupid. And I was like, oh. So Forest aren't as good at pressing as Brighton, and I don't expect them to have the same intent either. So that problem might be sort of alleviated a little bit. But I don't think we should then pretend we're some, centenary point Man City team that's going to get beautiful style going and possession football. It's not what we've got this squad for this season. Don't try and do it, is my view.
Well, yeah. And I'm fine with it a little bit, but we need to lean into playing more aggressively and a bit more direct at times, and it should make things flow a lot better, and I don't think this game should be any different. Yeah, we won't have the issue of a high aggressive press like Brighton's to worry about, but we'll have a team that will be very quick to get into a block, and we'll need to move it a bit more direct at times to try to unsettle that and stop it from getting as solid as what it could be. A bit more time for him to work on the block, for Dyche to work on the block, that is. So hopefully we can try to make use of whoever it is the striker for this game, because Calvert-Lewin did have a knock from the Brighton game, and we don't know what that is yet. So hopefully it isn't a bad one, and it was just a knock, and he's fine to play. But worst comes to worst, we'll have Mitchell, and he can also do. He's kind of like a diet Calvert-Lewin, just can do all the things but none of the fat. And not that Calvert-Lewin's fat, if people understand the metaphor.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay, so what will this game of football look like, and where will the game be won or lost, in your opinion?
It's going to be two teams that are leaning more towards physicality, so it might look quite ugly, which I think happens just in general, but a lot more this season in the Premier League, of like teams that actually maybe don't want to have the ball, and it ends up looking really not very nice. There's Bournemouth against someone the other day, and it was just grim, because it might have been against Forest, but it was more recent than that. But it was just pass, go long, other team pass, go long. There might be a bit of that. With us, there might be a lot of. I could see, if we're trying to create through Okafor and the emphasis is on him, I could see there being a lot of attacks that break down and people getting annoyed by that. And it's like, yeah, it's not perfect, but we don't have another option. You kind of have to just trust that one is going to work. Yeah, I'd like to see us, we said about the physicality side, kind of use the physicality to get up the pitch and then maybe try and establish ourselves a little bit more from there. But the emphasis is on the physicality, not the we're going to play nicely through you and then score kind of thing. It's like, which way do you prioritize? Yeah, could be quite scrappy, quite just transitional. Dyche teams are never, showcase football for either team, because they kind of drag you into their style, I feel like.
Yeah.
Which maybe if we do play all the physical boys, actually we won't lose out on, in the way that other Dyche teams, like against Burnley when we had Bielsa, I feel like there were times where, because they were just bigger and stronger than us, we got dragged into their nonsense. Whereas at least if it goes that way, particularly if Calvert-Lewin and Longstaff and Stack play, we should at least be on like a level playing field with them on that basis.
I can't disagree with any of that. Although I do think that maybe we will dominate possession a fair bit. I don't think Dyche will be too fussed about us having the ball.
No.
So I think he will press aggressively in moments, but it will only be in moments, and it won't be anything like a concerted high press. But I do think that if we want to get forward and get going, we do need to go longer, either down the flanks for Okafor to run onto, or to Calvert-Lewin for him to flick on, or knock it down to Aronson, who can then carry the ball. I think that'll be our best way to quickly hit them, and I think if we do that, then I think that could be where this game will be won for me, if we are able to do that. But we will see what happens, and that's about all we've got time for today. Just a quick reminder, the website for our Patreon is patreon.com/ASAW Patreon. We donate to the Leeds Food Bank. 10% of every Patreon subscription goes to the Leeds Food Bank. And if you want to donate too, that website is leedsnorthandwest.foodbank.org.uk. And last thing to plug is the YouTube. We have been putting up most ones on YouTube, and this is going to be the first one which we'll have on YouTube. His internet is playing nicely today, so we've been able to get it up. So like and subscribe on YouTube. It really does help us out to get that subscribers up as quickly as we can. We're up to around about 600. So thank you very much to everyone who has subscribed so far. But we need more. And all that's left for me to say is thank you very much for coming on tonight, Will.
That's all right. Thank you for having me, Martin.
No worries. And thank you to all your listeners and watchers on YouTube. We'll be back for a review of this game. And then it is the international break. We will hopefully have something planned, special for our patrons during the international break. We're not sure exactly what it's going to be yet, but we will have something nice for you. But for now, thank you all for listening, and we hope you enjoy the game and have a great week. Bye.